Part 2 of Death in the Long Grass. The quad bikes separated, arcing away from each other. At least that meant they must have dropped the wire. Alex had twisted his knee in the last fall and he knew it was only a matter of time before they cornered him and finished him off. Half limping, he ran forward, searching for somewhere to hide or something to defend himself with. Apart from some money, he had nothing in his pockets, not even a penknife. The engines were distant now, but he knew they would be closing in again at any moment. And what would it be next time? More cheese wire or something worse? It was worse. Much worse. There was the roar of an engine, and then a billowing cloud of red fire exploded over the grass, blazing it to a crisp. Alex felt it singe his shoulders, yelled and threw himself to one side. One of the riders was carrying a flamethrower. He had just aimed a bolt of fire 8 meters long, meaning to burn Alex alive. And he almost succeeded. Alex was saved only by the narrow ditch he landed in. He hadn't even seen it until he had thudded to the ground into the damp soil, the jet of flame licking at the air just above him. It had been close. There was a horrible smell. His own hair. The fire had singed the ends. Choking, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. That actually reminds me, I think we flashed back to him at the car yard. Do you remember that exact sentence before? He clambered out of the ditch and ran blindly forward. He had no idea where he was going anymore. He only knew that in a few seconds the quad would be back. He had taken about 10 paces before he realised he had reached the edge of the field. There was a warning sign and an electrified fence stretching as far as he could see. But for the buzzing sound the fence was making, he would have run right into it. The fence was almost invisible, and the quad bikers moving fast towards him would be unable to hear the warning sound over their own engines. Oh. He stopped and turned round. About 50 metres away from him, the grass was being flattened by the still invisible quad as it made its next charge. But this time Alex waited. He stood there, balancing on the heels of his feet, like a matador. 20 metres, 10. Now he was staring straight into the goggles of the rider, saw the man's uneven teeth as he smiled, still gripping the flamethrower. The quad smashed down the last barrier of grass and leapt on him. Except that Alex was no longer there. He had dived to one side, and too late, the driver saw the fence and rocketed on, straight into it. The man screamed as the wire caught him around the neck, almost garrotting him. The bike twisted in midair, then crashed down. The man fell into the grass and lay still. He had torn the fence out of the ground. Alex ran over to the man and examined him. For a moment he thought it might have been Yasin, but it was a younger man, dark-haired, ugly. Alex had never seen him before. The man was unconscious but still breathing. The flamethrower lay extinguished on the ground beside him. Behind him he heard the other bike, some distance away, but closing. Whoever these people were, they had tried to run him down, cut him in half and incinerate him. He had to find a way out before they got really serious. He ran over to the abandoned quad, which had come to rest lying on its side. He heaved it up again, jumped on the seat and pressed the starter. The engine sprang into life. At least there were no gears to worry about. Alex twisted the accelerator and gripped the handlebars as the machine jolted him forward. And now he was slicing through the grass, which became a green blur as the quad carried him back towards the footpath. He couldn't hear the other bike, but hoped that the rider would have no idea what had happened and so wouldn't be following him. His bones rattled as the quad hit a rut and bounced upwards. He had to be careful, lose his concentration for a second, and he would be on his back. He cut through another green curtain and savagely pulled on the handlebars to bring himself round. He had found the footpath and also the edge of the cliff. Just 3 meters more and he would have launched himself into space and down to the rocks below. For a few seconds he sat where he was, the engine idling. That was when the other quad appeared. Somehow the second rider must have guessed what had happened. He had reached the footpath and was facing Alex, about 200 metres away. Something glinted in his hand, resting on the handlebar. He was carrying a gun. Alex looked back the way he had walked. It was no good. The path was too narrow. By the time he had turned the quad round, the armed man would have reached him. One shot and it would all be over. Could he go back into the grass? No, for the same reason. He had to move forward, even if that meant heading for a straight-on collision with the other quad. Why not? Maybe there was no other way. The man gunned his engine and spurted forward. Alex did the same. Now the two of them were racing towards each other down a narrow path. A bank of earth and rocks suddenly rising up to form a barrier on one side and the edge of the cliff on the other. There wasn't enough room for them to pass. They could stop or they could crash, but if they were going to stop, they had to do in the next 10 seconds. The quads were getting closer and closer, moving faster all the time. The man couldn't shoot him now, not without losing control. Far below, the waves glittered silver, breaking against the rocks. The edge of the cliff flashed by. The noise of the other quad filled Alex's ears. The wind rushed into him, hammering at his chest and face. It was like the old-fashioned game of chicken. One of them had to stop. One of them had to get out of the way. 3, 2, 1. It was the enemy who finally broke. He was less than 5 metres away, so close that Alex could make out the perspiration on his forehead. Just when it seemed that a crash was inevitable, he twisted his quad and swerved off the path, up onto the embankment. At the same time, he tried to fire his gun, but he was too late. His quad was slanting, tipping, over onto just 2 of its wheels, and the shot went wild. The man yelled out. Firing the gun had caused him to lose what little control he had left. He fought with the quad, trying to bring it back onto 4 wheels. It hit a rock and bounced upwards, landing briefly on the footpath, then continued over the edge of the cliff. Alex had felt the machine rush past him, but he had seen little more than a blur. He had shuddered to a halt and turned round just in time to watch the other quad fly into the air. The man, still screaming, had managed to separate himself from the bike on the way down, but the two of them hit the water at the same moment. The quad sank a few seconds before the man. Who had sent him? It was Nadia Vole who had suggested the walk, but it was Mr. Grin who'd actually seen him leave. Mr. Grin had given the order. He was sure of it. Alex took the quad all the way to the end of the path. The sun was still shining as he walked down into the little fishing village, but he couldn't enjoy it. He was angry with himself because he knew he'd made too many mistakes. He should have been dead now, he knew. Only luck and a low-voltage electric fence had managed to keep him alive. Action-packed chapter there, crew. Thursday afternoon treat or what? So, we are getting to the end of this story now. And although remote learning is not what we want to be in that classroom, I'll tell you one thing. We're getting through this book a lot quicker. This will be finished by Easter, and then we'll have more reading if we're still on remote learning. But what we've got to do then is when we go back into the class, make time. Do a good 20 minutes a day. Sort me out. Have a word with me. Because if we can make time now, we can make time when we're back in the classroom. I want to hear your opinions on this, guys. Where is this story going? Alex seems to think an individual has sent the men to kill him. I think differently. I also want to know what his plan is. Can he really go back to Sayle Enterprises? What's he going to do now? All of his equipment to contact London is in his room. Really interesting, and we've got one more chapter before we have to wait for the weekend. Ooh. Enjoy your Thursday evening, and I'll see you for tomorrow when we will have done our first full week of remote learning. Super proud of you all. Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the sunshine. And have a good and lovely Thursday evening. Take care.